Hey YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. I'd like to make a bit of a movie for the, air quotes, edification of a fella called VB Ed. And VB Ed lives in Perth. And VB Ed is a bit of a mate of mine. And VB Ed just posted a movie talking about bogans. And according to VB Ed, a bogan is somebody who wears a flannelette shirt, has a relatively low level of education, speaks in a manner which reveals their level of low education, and they smoke Winfield Blue. Ed, I got to say, this is possibly under constumble for somebody who's a crow eater. A crow eater is what we in the eastern states, you know, people who live to the south and the east of what they used to call the Brisbane line, you know, that part of Australia which was considered to be defensible against the Japanese who weren't wanting to invade anyway. But from slightly north of Brisbane to slightly north of Adelaide, that's the real part of Australia. You other fellas, you're considered to be dispensable. Just go and have a look in the War Department's records. So apparently over there in Western Australia, Eddie boy, where you need to be edificated, that means strengthened, built up, reinforced, re-educated. Over there, you've got the idea that a bogan is somebody who wears a flannelette shirt and has a mullet haircut and displays their lack of education by the way they speak. Well, I have a different view. And even your average swamp wallaby shares my view and doesn't pay much attention to yours, VB Ed. You see, a bogan is not necessarily somebody with not much education but a lot of ambition who's living in the city and working hard. If you look at the island incontinent of Abbottania, you'll see that I live over here on the east coast, which is sort of on the defensible side of the Brisbane line, whereas VB Ed lives over here. And over there they have a kind of a inbred, overcompensated inferiority complex. Makes them want to constantly sling off at anybody who comes from over here, because over here the soil's better and the rainfall's better. But anyway, if you go looking for where might there be a geographical landform which you could blame for people being called, quote, bogans, unquote, we have to come down here into the Bs. Now, once we get into the Bs, we've got Blaney, Blighty, Badella, Bogangate, Bogangar, Bogabilla, Bogabri, Blinker, Boysdale, Bomaderry. So let's have a little bit of a look at Bogangate, which is at E13. So we have E, and we scroll on up here merrily until we come to 13. And there we have, by golly, by gosh, Bogangate. And why is it called Bogangate? Well, that would be because there's a bit of a river here, which it's called a river. It's definitely a river. It's blue and it says river and it says Bogan. And if we follow that river all the way up here to Brewarrina, it joins the Barwon River. Okay, so a bogan is somebody who comes from pretty much that chunk of New South Wales, right? Somebody from about here, you could call them a bogan, right? Because they come from somewhere near the Bogan River. And Ed, mate, for your edification, you can ask the average amorous pair of swamp wallabies and they will tell you that being a bogan doesn't have much to do with wearing a flannelette shirt and living in the suburbs. The people who live in the suburbs and get called bogans, they are people who have moved away from the country because they couldn't make a living out here. What they are in Sydney, they're called Westies, because they live in Western Sydney. And they've moved from the country to the city to try and make a living, right? But a bogan is somebody who actually lives by the banks of the Bogan River in mid-western New South Wales. And meanwhile, VB Ed, this is not quite kangaroo porn because this is swamp wallabies indulging in foreplay. Yeah, she's not real interested, hey? There you go. This kind of reminds me, VB Ed, of your project to run round and round a tree at ever-increasing relativistic speeds until you disappear up your own fundamental orifice. Are you like the swamp wallaby? Chasing his girlfriend around a stringy bark tree? Tell me, VB Ed, are you as gentle as this when you approach your missus? And does she lead you in circles like this? I must admit, when I started the movie, I had no idea I was going to get a finish like this. He's still lashing his tail. Well, golly gosh, gee darn shucks, Ed, I think Mr. Whitetail has noticed that he's being observed. And I think his girlfriend, aka Fruit Loop, has also noticed that they're being observed. And they've decided that the show's over. They're not going to do any more for any more. But anyway, you can't let a good script get in the way of what's actually happening now. To VB Ed and all those dust eaters living where the crows fly backwards to keep the dust out of their eyes, now you know what a bogan is and what a bogan is not. The bogan is not necessarily anybody living in the suburbs because they can't hack it living on inland Australia. A bogan is somebody who comes from the banks of the Bogan River in mid-western New South Wales. Eduardo, lift your game. Honey Bunchykins, warbles on what to YouTube. Ciao.